From the heart of our nation's capital, here's Family Research Council President Tony Perkins.
John Hines, D.C. Bureau Chief, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Oh, hey, Tony. It's great to be with you on this historic day, here on Capitol Hill. Very interesting, a lot of news, sir.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. The House voting for a second time. The president makes history, as you said, a historic day. I don't know that it's certainly not a positive historic day, but for a second time in his term, the Democrats have impeached the president. 10 Republicans joining this time in the impeachment. What's your sense from the way the debate went today?
Well, I think, my takeaway is I spoke to probably, I suppose a dozen lawmakers throughout the course of the day. And I know that there was a lot of anger expressed on the floor in some of the statements. My takeaway is that I think a lot of, at least on the GOP side, a lot of members have actually passed through the anger statement, the anger stage, and they are more of a state of amazement or stupefaction. And here's why. Republicans tend to be very practical in their outlook. And a lot of them simply cannot make any common sense out of what's going on. And they can't make any common sense out of it. They understand the strategy, the political tactic, but as far as it being commonsensical, it just escapes them. And why, for instance, it was explained to me several times, would you want to impeach a president not once, but for the second time? He's just a week from leaving office, for goodness sakes. Add to that the idea of having a trial then, potentially, over in the Senate, where, the incoming Biden administration is the headlines are going to be dominated by the former president, who they don't even like for, a week, 10 days, who knows how long. And if you're an incoming Democratic president, is that really what you would want to dominate the headlines and to sort of upstage your message? Is the former president of the other party, somebody you don't like, don't respect, taking your message and sucking all the oxygen out of the room? So I think, for a lot of the GOP members, at least on the GOP side, the Democrats are doing what they're doing. But to them, I think they just figure, the juice is not worth the squeeze, and they just can't really make sense out of why the heck they're doing this, other than just political retribution, Tony.
Yeah, the process even speaks to that from the standpoint of they convene no hearings to look into the impeachment. They just hurriedly drafted this impeachment with one article of, creating or causing insurrection, gave him no opportunity to defend himself. If there's a kangaroo court, it certainly looks like this process was. Now, whether or not he gets his day in court in the Senate, they'll actually take this up and have hearings. What are you hearing on that side of things?
Well, this is the other thing that's really amazing. And once again, I've asked probably a dozen lawmakers over here, what the heck happens now? And they don't know. Nobody knows. Nancy Pelosi may know, but she might not even know. It was reported earlier that on the Senate side, they were meeting with a parliamentarian trying to figure out how they could take this and get things started earlier. But it looks like that's not going to happen now. We had Mr. Hoyer, who is a member of the leadership, saying that the House was going to send the impeachment article right over to the Senate, which is confusing because if they follow precedent and do what they did last time, that means that the Senate has to immediately take that up. And nobody knows how they do that if the Senate is not in session. And the problem with that, of course, is there was a unanimous consent that they wouldn't come in until the 19th. And to change that, you have to get 100 senators to kind of reverse that, unless they can figure out some, and the Senate rules are arcane, so maybe they can. And that was the thought earlier, but then it doesn't look like that's going to happen. And so nobody really knows what happens right now, other than the fact that at some point or another, probably the 19th, just before Mr. Biden is to be inaugurated. This will land over there, and then, of course, that's the headline. And once again, if you were a brand new president, is that really what you want, kind of out there, taking your message and sort of upstaging that? And that's just what a lot of these lawmakers just can't figure out the logic in that, Tony. It just doesn't make sense.
Well, as you pointed out in the Senate is a body of consent, and so they would have to consent to taking this up. So it's a completely different body in the way that it operates. It is not the leader. Of course, now Chuck Schumer will soon be the leader of the Senate by a hair. Harris, I should say, by a Harris, and and so they don't have much to work with over there, and it's unlikely they could get an agreement to move this further. So you're right. I don't know if they know what they're doing. I mean, I think it
seems
a part.
Like they don't. That's just the point. Nobody knows what they're doing right now.
Other than driven by hatred, in terms of they've been trying to impeach this president. Yeah, they've been trying to impeach him since day one. And as Jim Jordan said, it's to try to.
Nobody knows what they're doing, which means that there is something else at work here than logic and common sense and trying to guide the country, which points to political retribution and spite. That seems to be where that's going.
And so look at that and also explain, when you look at the polling data, that the president's approval rating has actually inched up just a bit.
I know. I was amazed. One of our reporters actually interviewed the president's pollster, John McLaughlin, and I think it was yesterday. And I talked to him about that, and I said, well, so how has the president's approval rating changed? And he said, well, it's down about 5 points, 6 points. This is according to Mr. McLaughlin, which is not that much for all of the noise that we've been reading about and hearing about. To find the approval of the president to have eroded by really not very much at all is pretty amazing. So his base seems to be with him and seems to be riding this out despite what's going on up here on the Hill, despite the message being put out by a lot of Democrats. So it's a very, very mystifying, Tony, and very strange historical moment, I think we're seeing.
John Hines, I have my view on this, but you've been covering politics for a while. I want to ask you your thoughts. Joe Biden calling for unity. In fact, America Unified, I think, is what the theme of his inauguration. Actions not necessarily matching words. But is this going to foment even more angst, division, frustration, and anger among the American people, among conservative voters, with the actions that Nancy Pelosi has decided to take? Well,
from what I've heard, talking to the dozen or so lawmakers today, I think that's probably the case. And this is the other thing that several of them expressed that exact point, and they mentioned the theme that you mentioned, and they mentioned the irony of this moment juxtaposed to that theme that Mr. Biden would like to pursue in his inauguration, and saying that this is not the way to do that it really makes a mockery of what Mr. Biden is attempting to do, which is a further reason for amazement and stupefaction, I think, amongst, at least on the GOP side on Capitol Hill. They can't figure out, once again, the logic. The logic defies people, and the messaging just does not seem to line up with the actions. The messaging does not match the actions, and I think that on the GOP side, they would like to feel that it is time to unify, that it is time to turn the page, and yet it doesn't seem like the Democratic colleagues are ready to do that just yet, because of this, I guess, political vendetta and this, for lack of a better word, spite, Tony.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those Sesame Street moments where one of these things are not like the other. It just doesn't line up.
You're right. You're right. That's right.
John Hines, thanks so much for joining us. Great to talk with you again.